They pushed her off the rooftop while laughing, thinking she was too weak, too quiet, too alone to matter. But the girl they mocked had come with a purpose far deeper than training. She wasn't just another cadet. They had pushed the sister of a young man who died in this same program under mysterious circumstances. And this time, their cruelty didn't disappear in the dark. It was caught on camera, hers and theirs. What they thought was a prank became the spark of a national storm. A fall meant to break her instead shattered the walls of corruption, exposed hidden abuse, and forced the world to confront what really happened behind closed training grounds. This is the story of how one girl stood up after a 3-story drop and made sure no one could ever laugh their way out of justice again. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from. Jess Turner felt the rough shove on her back before she heard the cadets' laughter. She stumbled forward, wind tearing past her ears as she fell from the rooftop of the 3-story training building. Above her, 6 cadets leaned over the ledge, laughing, pointing, recording. One of them shouted cruelly, "Die, be *th," like it was a harmless joke. They thought she was weak. They thought she had no one. They thought this fall would silence her. But Jess wasn't a normal trainee. She had prepared for this. As she plummeted, a hidden rescue drill safety net, installed earlier that week, broke her fall. The cadets had skipped that briefing, unaware it even existed. Jess hit the net hard, breath knocked out, blood on her lip, but alive. She sat up slowly, her body shaking, pain radiating through her shoulder. When she looked up at those 6 faces staring down at her, some grinning, some suddenly unsure, she realized something important. They didn't fear consequences because they had never faced any. Not for her, and definitely not for her brother. Jess stood, brushed the dust from her uniform, and whispered to herself, "This time, everything changes." Jess Turner's real name wasn't on her uniform. Her identity in the program was a cover, created for one reason: to investigate her brother's death. A year earlier, her younger brother, Noah, trained at this same base. He was kind-hearted, soft-spoken, and walked with a slight limp after a childhood injury. To bullies, that made him an easy target. Noah had called her many nights, voice trembling as he described how certain cadets tormented him, forcing him to do push-ups in freezing mud, locking him in the gym overnight, pouring water in his boots before long marches. Jess begged him to report it, but he always whispered the same words: "They'll make it worse." Then the call stopped. A week later, the military sent home a folded flag and a letter that said training-related stress. Jess knew the truth was being buried. She saw it in the officer's eyes at the funeral, a silence too rehearsed to be honest. So she trained, prepared, applied under a false identity, and entered the program as Cadet Jess Turner. Her goal wasn't glory or rank. It was justice. And now, with the rooftop fall recorded on her hidden collar camera, she finally had proof that the same cruelty still lived here. Jess walked into the medical bay, bruised and trembling, but determined. "I need to report an assault," she told the nurse. The nurse hesitated, eyes darting nervously before making a call. 10 minutes later, instead of help, the base commander stormed in with 2 military police officers. His voice was cold, dismissive. "You should have known your place, cadet. There's no need to cause unnecessary trouble." Jess realized immediately. The corruption wasn't limited to a handful of cadets. The rot went higher. The system protected abusers, silenced victims, and erased evidence. Arguing would get her nowhere. So she nodded, let them treat her injuries, and quietly returned to her bunk. But she didn't sleep. She pulled out her backup drive, hidden inside an empty toothpaste tube, and copied every video file she had recorded. Before dawn, she slipped away to the motor pool where an old janitor, Mr. Torres, swept gravel. He was a retired SEAL with haunted eyes, someone who had seen too much. When she whispered, "They did it to my brother too," his broom froze midair. He led her into his small shack, opened a dented locker, and pulled out 2 dusty hard drives labeled "Training Footage, Unreported." Jess plugged the old hard drives into a battered laptop. What appeared on the screen made her blood run cold. Video after video showed trainees abused in ways the public never saw. cadets tied to chairs, forced into cold showers, slapped, kicked, humiliated. Then came a clip that shattered her heart. Her brother, Noah, crying on the floor while a cadet kicked him and shouted, "You'll never be one of us." Jess covered her mouth, shaking. Mr. Torres whispered, "I tried to stop it once. They shut me down." He had saved the footage, hoping one day someone brave enough would come. Jess copied everything and sent it securely to 5 major news agencies. She knew the moment she pressed send, her life would change. Hours later, her room was searched, her phone confiscated, and she was summoned to the commander's office. He stared at her like she was an inconvenience he wanted to crush. "We know what you're doing," he said, "and you'll regret it." But before he could finish, the door burst open. A man in a black suit flashed a badge. Department of Defense Oversight Division. "Cadet Turner," he said, "you're coming with me." Jess braced for handcuffs, but the black SUV waiting outside was not for her arrest. Inside sat a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a calm confidence. "Relax," she said. "You passed, Jess. This was your final test." Jess stared in confusion as the woman continued. "Project Torchlight has been investigating corruption in elite training programs for years. We needed someone inside, someone with real motive, real courage." Jess felt the ground shift beneath her. She had thought she was fighting alone, but they had been watching since her brother's funeral, preparing her for this role. In a secure facility off the grid, she was debriefed and shown reports confirming her actions had triggered immediate arrests. 3 officers detained, the entire base under federal lockdown, and a national investigation launched. Still, Jess didn't feel victorious. She asked about the 6 cadets. The woman sighed. 3 confessed. 1 tried to run. 1 took his own life. Even monsters, Jess realized, were broken by the same system. When offered a place in Project Torchlight, she agreed, but made one condition: "I don't want revenge. I want prevention." For the next 2 years, Jess devoted herself to reforming the very system that had taken her brother. She trained harder than ever, not just physically, but in law, ethics, and leadership. She met families like hers, spoke before Congress, and helped rewrite nationwide safety protocols for military academies. Behind the scenes, she led a Torchlight team that reopened old cases, protected whistleblowers, and exposed hidden abuse methods. Her work created shockwaves across the country, inspiring other cadets to speak out. One day, while walking through a newly reformed training base, one that displayed her photo under the words "Honor Through Truth," a nervous young cadet whispered, "Ma'am, thank you for what you did." Jess smiled softly and replied, "Just make sure no one else ever gets pushed." But one night, alone in her room, she opened an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single line: "We see what you're doing. It's not over." Jess placed the letter beside her brother's photo and whispered, "Good. Neither am I." Because the mission that began on a rooftop was only the beginning of something far bigger.